Okay, Boker Tov, everybody. Let's begin our class with a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. This morning we will be talking about a very interesting topic. The topic for today is afterlife. In Hebrew we call it the Olam Haba, the world to come. And I would like to talk about this topic because I believe this is one of the topics where we can see the influence of the non-Jewish world into the Jewish world, and how Jewish philosophy, and I would say some Jewish practices, were shaped by the non-Jewish world, okay? And non-Jewish philosophy, and I'll try to show you how this idea of the afterlife has evolved in our Jewish tradition. So we will continue reading. This is chapter 40 in our book that we are reading, Jewish Wisdom. And the first thing that I would like to mention is that the idea of Olam Haba, the world to come, is not in the Torah at all. So we don't have any mention to the idea of Olam Haba in the Torah. And then we're going to read from Rabbi Telushkin, and we're going to see why, or one of the reasons why I also believe, like Rabbi Telushkin, why this topic is not mentioned in the Torah. But it's interesting to think, what do we believe about the Olam Haba? Do we believe that there is an Olam Haba? Do we believe that something is after this world and something is going to happen or not to us after we leave this world? You know, if you ask rabbis are divided. Some rabbis are going to tell you, yes, for sure, there is something that is supposed to happen when you leave this world. Some rabbis are going to say, well, nobody has come back and told us what's there, right? So we have to acknowledge the fact that when we talk about death, when we talk about Olam Haba, Tchiyat HaMeitim, the resurrection of the dead, we don't know, right? Nobody has come back and told us, yes, listen, for a fact, this is what's going on. So we have to acknowledge the fact that these are beliefs. And Judaism and any other religion is based on these beliefs. And we are part, or we are here today because we accept or we follow some of those beliefs that we feel are important for our lives. So I would like to start with my own personal view. I do think that there is an Olam Haba. I believe in the Olam Haba, in the world to come. Probably this is the main idea in Jewish tradition, and is that the body remains here. And the Torah says in the book of Genesis that Min afar ata velafar tashuv, we were created from the dust of the earth, and we shall return to the dust of the earth, right? So our body that serves as a continent for the soul will return to the dust of the earth at a certain point. But I believe that we are not only physical beings. I believe that there is a soul, there's a divine part that gives us life, and that's the soul. And I do believe that the soul returns to God. I believe that the soul returned to God, our Creator, and there is, I believe, this, this passage between this world and the world to come. And the Talmud reports that that passage between this world and the world to come, it won't be longer than how many months? Do you remember?
12.
That's 12, right? So the Talmud says that the Mishpat in the Gehinom, they use this idea of Gehinom. We don't believe in hell, right? Like other traditions, we don't have this idea of hell, that, the souls of people of evil people or bad people will stay there in a place where it's going to be surrounded by fire and a heat, that will bring this soul for a redemption. We don't believe that. We believe that there is a passage between this world and the world to come. The Talmud calls it Gehinom, which I would say it's an intermediate passage or intermediate place between this world and the world to come. And we know that there's going to be a judgment for things that we did and we did didn't do here in this world. And we also know that the mishpat there is for no longer than 12 months. And that's the reason why we say Kaddish for our parents only for 11 months. So nobody's going to think that we're trying to save them from the Gehinnom, right? We're trying to save them for an evil judgment. And that's why we say Kaddish for only 11 months. Okay, so I would like to read a little bit about this topic from Rabbi Telushkin and comment a little bit about this chapter. We have more chairs on over here. It's good to have a full table here. Good, very good. Okay.
Would you like a chair? No, thank you.
So then I would like to hear from you. What do you think about this topic of the afterlife, and if you believe or not in the world to come? Before we read from Rabbi Telushkin, I also would like to point out that there are at least two different ideas about the Olam Haba. One idea, the one that I already told you about, this immortality of the soul, right? That we believe that the soul will go back to heaven and will rest with God there for eternity. Some people believe in, and I would say some mystical traditions believe in this idea of reincarnation. Right? I would say that this is not really the main Jewish stream, right? If you would ask or if you would research, you would find that this is not a mainstream within Judaism, this idea of what we call in Hebrew Gilgul Neshamot, meaning that the soul will reincarnate in another being to come here to complete a mission that was not completed during the first appointment, or during the first how can we say it, like assignment. The first assignment, right, of that soul. But it exists, and it's a Jewish idea that the souls come back and they reincarnate, not in animals or trees or birds. You know, some other traditions believe that. We believe that if that happens, that's going to happen in the form of a human being, in order to complete a task that was not accomplished before when that soul was here in this world. So we call that tikkun haneshamot, right? So the fixing
very firm, I
of
think
the
it's
soul.
a Hasidic belief that in the world at any given time there are 36 good men, that don't know who they are, they don't know each other, but they exist, and one passes on, and the next one, unknown to him, takes his job, takes his position, and the theory is that without their existence, at any given time, the world will cease to exist.
Yeah. Those are the Lamed Vav
Lamed
Tzadikim.
Yeah,
Right.
but
It's interesting, the idea that they don't know that they are part of that
Right.
group.
right. But how does that square with what you're saying? Because
Well, because we believe that there is this transmission of the souls from generation to generation. So maybe, you know, one of those 36 souls was brought to the next generation in order to be part of that group, right? So if have you read Brian Weiss? No. Okay, so you have to. I write down the name. I read about him when I was well, I wasn't that. I was a rabbinical student, and it was very interesting for me. He's a physician, and he proves. He brings cases where he believed or where he showed about these past lives, and he speaks a lot about past lives and how souls can remember, or people can remember, what happened to them in a previous life. So, and he has this kind of method where he can ask the soul of a person, or he can ask a person, and that person would relate or would tell him what happened to him or to her in a previous life. And he connects it to the idea of phobias. What are phobias? Something that you cannot stand, right? So some people, for example, who cannot be on planes, or some people who cannot be on a ship at the sea, or some people who cannot tolerate spiders. Yeah. Oh, like you, like Sally. Okay, there you go. So he says that this might be connected to the way that you died in your previous or one of your previous lives.
How does he prove that?
Well, read the book, Brian Weiss. Many
You
masters,
read the
many
book and
souls,
so
many
it's
masters,
immediate response.
many souls, many masters, many souls. Well, because your soul was so moved or was so touched by the way that you died in that previous life that it still has this
Traumatized.
traumatized
That's a
by it.
supposition. That's not a fact.
Yeah, well, okay. You'll
He
read the
must have
book
been
and
a
you'll see.
psychiatrist.
Philosopher.
Yeah, no, he was a
Freudian,
physician.
no less.
He was a physician. Maybe I'm not sure if he was a psychiatrist or a
Maybe psychologist.
yeah. So let me backtrack a little bit.
You
So
don't think
this
he was the
is
surgeon, huh?
no.
You sure?
So this is one idea, the idea of the eternal existence of the soul, right? But the other idea connected to the world to come, or the Olam Haba, is what we call in Hebrew Tchiyat HaMeitim, meaning the resurrection of the dead, right? We're going to see it later. Maimonides strongly believed in that God will resurrect those who died, and they will come back to life based on the prophecy of, some
Ezekiel.
prophet Ezekiel, right?
Ezekiel.
I believe chapter 37, the valley of the dry bones that will come back to life. So Maimonides, based on that and other passages, has this idea that bodies will, or people who died, will resurrect and come back to life.
My understanding of that, though, was totally different than Olam Haba. That was at least what I was told was, that would be a one-time event. At some point in the future.
Yeah.
Dead body,
Correct.
And then
So-
they'll just be alive again until they die again. I mean,
But that is related to the idea of afterlife, right? Because this is something that is going to happen after life.
Yeah, but a one,
the first life.
but a one-time event that says, okay, here's your second chance at it, but you only get a second chance.
Right, but you can think it from this perspective. If your soul is immortal,
Yeah.
there is no necessity for resurrection of the dead,
Okay.
correct?
Well, resurrection of the body, though. I mean,
Or the body,
Yeah.
in this case.
Yeah.
So those are two different understandings
Yeah,
of
okay.
the afterlife. Okay, so let's take a quick look here. It's a very interesting chapter. Okay, so let me see if I can get a volunteer to read. Oh, Debbie, please go ahead.
Okay. In the world to come, there will be no eating or drinking or procreation or business or jealousy or hatred or competition, but the righteous will sit with crowns on their heads, feasting on the radiance of the Shekhinah, the divine presence.
Okay, so how is the Olam Haba depicted here? How would you characterize the Olam Haba according to this idea from Masachet Brachot?
That's like a traditional heaven where the angels just sit around and,
Okay, angels
Hang out.
sitting around. Okay, what else?
So I told them before, Rabbi Waldman used to say, it's like the big yeshiva in the sky, and Moses is in the front row. He said he'd be in the back row reading
Right.
the newspaper.
Right. Okay, I like that. But there are no physical needs.
It's
Right?
It's very ethereal. It's one of those.
Right, so this is,
does.
and again, nobody went there and came back and told us this, right? So we believe that this is going to, or this is the way the Olam Haba is going to look like, where there are not going to be any physical needs. The needs are going to be only spiritual, and you'll have time to hang with your rabbis from now and from your past and from your future, and study Torah and enjoy there
Obviously
in the
written
Olam
by a
Haba.
rabbi.
By the way, we believe that Yom Kippur is sort of the Olam Haba. We believe that Yom Kippur is really a recreation of our death, or a preparation for our death. And I gave a sermon a couple of years ago, did I? Or if not, I will give it in a couple of years, about how how Yom Kippur is so similar or so close to reenacting our own death. Right? So you wear white on Yom Kippur, like the tachrihim, like the shroud that you use before you go to the grave. And you don't drink, you don't eat, you don't have sexual relations, things that you don't do when you're dead, right? So the idea is that you focus only on the spirit and the soul, and the same idea of the Olam Haba. So the idea is after Neilah, after 25 hours, you rebirth, or you are born again, and you have a new life to live, plenty of opportunities and things that you can redo for the world, that for the year that is starting at that moment.
But you have no ability to know what happens to your family, or so you're totally. Well, the question is, do you even remember? Is that in your head at all? To know. So if you're up there, are you thinking about where you came from, or it's just totally gone?
What do you think? I don't know.
I hope it's totally gone, because otherwise it would be very hard.
Yeah, but some people speak about karma, right? You know what karma is?
Fate.
Fate, okay. How would you explain it a little further? Some people say that karma are souls that are traveling together. Souls that are traveling together. So they say that, and this is again Brian Weiss, I believe. So if you're interested in
Like
this
this
topic,
guy.
go and read about it. So the idea is that a group of souls travel together for eternity. So some relatives, for example, in one life can be your parents, in another life can be your siblings. In one life, they can be your closest friend. In the next life, they can be your relatives, right? So the idea is that they all travel together. And when you see a person, you say, wow, I know this person, or I feel this deep connection, like I have known this person forever. Has this happened to you? It has happened to me a couple of times. Maybe that's part of this group of souls traveling together. I think that it's very powerful to think about it, that things are not for coincidence, or relatives and close friends are not for coincidence, but it is about this group of souls traveling together through eternity. Okay. Let's move on a little bit so we can.
For most believers, the major issue of faith is God's existence, not whether there is an afterlife. For once one believes that there is a good and all-powerful God, it follows that there must be a life beyond this one. The only possible explanation for God allowing so much suffering and injustice is there is another dimension of existence where there is redress.
Okay, I'm going to go back to that after the next paragraph, because I think that this idea of suffering is connected to the idea of the Olam Haba, the world to come, as we see it in an historical perspective. Okay, so we'll go back.
Strangely, the Torah contains no reference to an afterlife. Perhaps this is because these 5 books were written in the aftermath of Hebrew slavery in Egypt. The Egyptian experience had taught the children of Israel how dangerous an obsession with afterlife could become. Consider that the major achievement of many pharaohs was to have built an enormous tomb, a pyramid, for themselves. For this purpose, thousands of slaves were worked to death. The Egyptians' holiest work, the Book of the Dead, reflects their obsession with afterlife.
So what Rabbi Telushkin is telling us is that historically, this idea of the afterlife was shaped by other cultures where we, the Jewish people, lived. Right? So here, clearly, and I agree with him, I think it's a very interesting idea, that when we went out from Egypt, the Egyptians were probably the culture that believed in afterlife. If you went to Cairo or to any of the pyramids, you know that was one of the main topics and the main ideas behind that. They wanted to build these pyramids so their soul, and probably you went to the museums in New York and you saw this canoe. You know, have you seen that canoe that was supposed to bring all the souls to back to heaven? So the Egyptians, this was really a main belief for them. So what Rabbi Telushkin is saying here, based on biblical scholars, is that Judaism, it's not that rejected it, but did not mention it in the Torah. So we don't have any mention in the Torah because we wanted to part ways with the Egyptians and one of their main beliefs, which was the belief in the world to come or in the afterlife. But what happened next? Then the Talmud came, or the rabbis came, and we know that there was a lot of suffering back then. The Romans were very cruel, were horrible with the Jews, and also the Greeks before that, right? The Greeks were also firm believers in this idea of the Olam Haba. So apparently the sages in the Talmud adopted it from the Greeks, from the Romans and other cultures, and they gave an explanation to the suffering of the Jews back then. And they said, why are we suffering here? Because there is a reward in the world to come. So don't worry, your existence is miserable here, but you will be rewarded in the world to come, in the Olam Haba.
Sounds like the church.
It's a very
Yeah,
Christian. it's a
well,
very
yeah,
Christian concept.
yeah. Well, you have to have in mind that early Christians and the church started then, right? So, of course, it's very close to the Christians. So it's interesting to see that the Torah in the Bible, we don't have mention to the Olam Haba. We have a strong belief in the Olam Haba during the time of the rabbis in the Talmud because of the suffering and the ideas from the Greeks. Now,
How many generations of decades, centuries BC were
the rabbis? Well, the Mishnah is in the 3rd century, and the Talmud in the 5th. So we're talking about the 5th century.
CE?
Mhm.
After Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
So there's really no discussion here of good or bad. It's just your soul goes. Doesn't matter if you're a good person or a bad person.
Oh, we're going to get there.
Okay.
Yeah. Give me a second.
Don't get off that easy.
let me...
No bargain, no bargain.
So Howie, let me just move through the centuries here. So you have the Talmud and you have the rabbis, right? And then you have the Middle Ages. And the idea of the world to come, or the Olam Haba in the Middle Ages, was also a main idea. We have sages like Maimonides, for example, that as part of his 13 attributes of principles of faith, he said that I believe that the Mashiach will come and will revive the dead. And actually, we use that during our prayers and Igdal, right? The Igdal was composed based on these 13 attributes of faith. And we say, Meitim Yechayel, right? So the Messiah will come, and God forever praised will resurrect the dead. So it was a main belief in the time of Maimonides and other sages. And the same with the Kabbalah. As I mentioned to you before, the Kabbalah strongly believed in the fact of Gilgul Neshamot, this how do you say it in English?
Transcendent?
Transmigration or migration.
Migration of the soul.
There you go. Transmigration of the souls, right? And then we come to the modern times. So what would you say that today most people believe or do not believe in this idea of the afterlife?
In which religion?
Us?
Judaism.
I'm a no.
You're a no. You do not. Okay.
It's a tremendous social control mechanism when you look at it from a societal basis.
Okay.
Because if you believe that things are lousy today, but if you're good or do good things or whatever, they're going to get better in the afterlife after you die, it's tremendously controlling if you believe that. And that's how the church used it for hundreds of years.
Why would you say it's tremendously controlling?
Because you don't complain. Your life is lousy now. Don't complain. Be good, because your reward is after you die.
Abide to the law, and then you'll have your reward.
Controlling. I get your concept, Mike, but the controlling has a negative. I'd look at it as a more positive.
It is a negative thing.
I'm saying, but I'm looking at it in a more positive way of saying, how do I deal with bad things, and how do I keep myself from going crazy?
Well, that's something else.
But I'm saying so.
Well, but we have incorporated it in our prayers, right? And we believe in that, and we believe that if we are good and we follow the mitzvot, we will inherit the world to come.
And even the logic that Solutions has here at the second paragraph, where he basically says, okay, if you believe in God, and by definition, religion is going to believe in God. If you believe in God, the only explanation for how does God let these bad things happen is there'll be a reward for it later on.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense based on the premise that you believe in God.
Right, right. But I think that we live in a very structured and materialistic and concrete society, right? So that you have to see and you have to touch something in order for that to exist. And so some people say, this is a book because I can see it and I can read it. This is a watch because I can see it and I can touch it. But where is God? I don't see God. Therefore, I do not believe in God.
Well, the same argument you made before about nobody's ever come back from the dead, so how do we know?
Correct.
You can make the same argument about God.
Correct. Correct. Right? So the same with the afterlife. I don't know. Nobody has come back. I don't believe in it.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that people are, and if we would go around this table, probably would have 50-50 those who believe in the afterlife and those who do not believe in the afterlife.
So Descartes was wrong. I think, therefore I am.
Therefore, I am. Well, maybe.
So he wasn't right.
I think, therefore I'm not, is what.
Oh, okay.
Therefore, I am. So the question is, and going back to Howie's point, what happened with a person who was very evil and committed a lot of wrong things and bad things? Is that person going to inherit the Olam Haba? Is that person going to have a place in the world to come? Well, it is the problem, and I want to show you on page 277. You can see the first quote there, Masechet Sanhedrin. This is a very, very famous Mishnah there, chapter 10, page 277 on the very top. It says in Hebrew, Kol Israel yesh lahem chelek ba'olam haba. All Israel have a portion in the world to come. So if you were...
But the translation says the righteous.
No, that's the second.
Where?
No.
No, that's a
that's the
separate one.
second
That's
one.
the second one. So according to the first one, regardless, if you were a good person or a bad person, you will have a place in the world to come.
If you're
This
a
is-
Jew, all Israel.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Now
That's
I
a
don't
big
want to get
difference
it.
here.
Well, we can get into that later. But first, let's understand this idea of all Israel, Kol Israel.
Right.
It is a problem.
Yeah. It
But
says
you said-
you got if you're not Jewish, you got to be good. If you're Jewish, you're
That's
in
what the
automatically.
second one
I'm
says.
saying that the combination of these two implies that.
But last week you said that a person, even on their deathbed, has a chance to do teshuvah.
Good. And listens to the... So I believe that this
no,
this
she
Mishnah
has to start.
is this Mishnah is related to what we studied I don't know if last week or 2 weeks ago about this idea of teshuvah, right? And the idea is that you can repent even at the very last moment in your life. And we have this prayer that is called the vidui, the confession, that we say it in our in the place where we are going to die, in our, how do you call the bed? Deathbed, right? So your deathbed. If you are conscious, you should say it. If not, some person will say it on your behalf. And we say that we repent for everything wrong that we did in our life. So many people, many young people ask me and says, well, so I'm going to be a...
Really bad.
really bad. And at the very last moment, I'm
Sorry.
going to, oh, sorry, God, yeah, I
See,
want to
my
repent.
thinking is what goes around comes around. But it does it here. So if you're bad things will eventually happen to you. I do believe that. And if you're really good things will happen.
And we all hope that'll be the case too.
I just know it.
Yeah.
But you know,
My-
it's interesting that in the law, that has a special place because the law allows an exception, if you would, for what's known as deathbed confessions. And the reason is, the thinking is, that no matter how bad someone has been during their life,
Don't point this way.
Oh,
no matter how bad someone is being during their life, on their deathbed, when they're facing their maker, if you will, they won't lie.
mm,
They will do good and they will confess. And that confession is entitled to belief. It's
Yeah.
entitled to credence.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's true or not,
we don't know.
know.
Of course we don't know.
But it is a...
So,
It's certainly
yeah,
part of
my,
the
my,
law.
my answer is, when you are traveling, you can stay in the Hyatt or you can stay in a motel, Motel 6.
Or
right?
Motel
So
5.
I think that the same is going to happen with the world to come. You can have a room in the world to come in the Hyatt or the Sheraton or the Hilton, or you can have a small room in this motel in the middle of the road. Right? So I think that the place or the way you are going or not to enjoy the Olam Haba is going to be related to the way that you behave here in this world. How do I know? I don't know, but that's
the
my
problem.
that's my feeling. That you are going to inherit the portion in the world to come according to the way you behaved here in this world.
I think we all want to believe that. I mean, deep down inside, we all want to believe that. I don't think very many of us really do. And of course, the reason is because there's no proof.
No.
Not only is there no proof of it, but there's so much evil, if you will, in the world. Unrequited evil, unpunished evil. Evil that continues. You say to yourself, how could this be?
Right.
How
But you know
could
what,
this be?
Jimmy? The world to come was a source of comfort for many Jews in the time of the Talmud, when they were under this horrible persecution by the Romans, and the rabbis strongly encouraged people to accept what was going on, because there was going to. I don't know if that answer could possibly work today. I don't think that if someone sees, this gun violence and people killing each other and these terrorist acts, horrible terrorist acts that are going on around the world, with the idea of the Olam Haba, I don't think so. I don't think that that's going to be a source of comfort for anybody.
And it certainly was not a source of comfort during the Holocaust.
Yeah, which is the next point. But let me point something, and is that what about Muslims, right? Some extremists, they believe that if they blow up themselves, they are going to inherit paradise surrounded by virgins. And how many? I don't remember.
72?
I thought it was 40 or 70.
Yeah,
72.
well,
72.
But again, this idea
Then
of
they'll die again, you see. That's
this idea of the world to come has been adopted by different religions in many different ways. You see there a way to harm others based on this idea of Olam Haba, on the world to come.
which is the ultimate perversion of the thought.
Yeah. So let's take a quick look to the Holocaust piece that it's interesting here. Let's continue on 277.
Despite Talmudic Judaism's categorical assertion of an existence beyond this one, opinion polls about America's religious beliefs repeatedly discovered that a far smaller percentage of Jews and Christians believe in an afterlife. Doubts about the next world are common even among non-Orthodox rabbis. Dennis Prager has written of attending a funeral conducted by one of America's most prominent conservative rabbis. At the gravesite, the rabbi commented, "Judaism does not believe in a life after death. Rather, we live on in the good works we do and in the memories of those we leave behind."
By the way, that's also a possibility to understand the Olam Haba. Some rabbis would say, and some people would say, that the Olam Haba is not in the world to come. The Olam Haba is in this world, and the legacy that you leave for future generations. Okay, I buy that. It's fine.
I like that.
Yeah.
Among other things, Prager reasons such a statement is a particularly poor, thoughtless attempt at solace to the 6 million Jews, nearly all of whose loved ones also died. If this life is all there is, and people live on solely through the memories of loved ones, then most of the 6 million died as forgotten smoke. Ooh. No. For Prager, the Holocaust in particular underscores the importance of an afterlife, particularly for anyone who claims to believe in God. If there is nothing after this life, then the Nazis and the Jewish children they threw alive into Auschwitz furnaces have identical fates. If I believe such a thing, I would either become an atheist or hate a God who had created such a cruelly absurd world.
Right. So here the analogy is, my feeling is that what Rabbi Prager and Telushkin are trying to do here is that, the Jews in the time of the Talmud suffered dearly and deeply the destruction of the temple. There was, this hope in the afterlife. Today, of course, there's no comparison, but we are suffering, or we suffered the Holocaust. Our solace and our comfort is in the world to come. I don't think that comparison is right. I think that, the Holocaust happened because of historical and theological reasons and particular reasons. And I don't think that the afterlife could be a comfort for those who perished, or the families of those who perished in the Shoah. I don't know what do you think, but that's my
the
feeling.
interesting point here, which I never thought of, is that if you buy you live on in the memory of others. If everybody you know got murdered, you're not going to live on because nobody remembers you anymore.
Right.
Except that many of us will stand to say Kaddish on Yom Kippur, even
But
to say it for the 6 million.
Yes, but you don't actually know those people. You have no knowledge of their lives. You don't know what they did.
No.
It's not like you remember your parents or grandparents, whatever.
But still, I think that the Holocaust was such a huge, horrible tragedy for the Jewish people that there is no comfort after that. And I don't think that even the idea of the notion of the Olam Haba could be a source of comfort for anybody.
I think that if you actually bought into the whole, all these people are, who the innocent people who were murdered, who are going to now sit in heaven and have thrown crowns and all that stuff. If you really buy into that, that would be comforting.
Yeah, could
But what he's saying is that people don't believe.
Yeah.
But you're a whack job if you buy into that.
Well, not necessarily.
Would there be a state of Israel if you didn't have a Holocaust?
Are you asking me?
I don't think so.
I think so,
I
because
think
I think
that
that
the world
those
being
those
inside.
those were two complete different historical developments. The idea of the state of Israel started way before the Shoah, with the
talking about a modern state of
with the
Israel.
Zionism and the Jewish and the
Eventually probably would have happened anyway.
and the Zionist Congress and everything. It started way before the Holocaust. So I think that the Holocaust accelerated the creation of the State of Israel, but I think that even without the Holocaust, the State of Israel would have happened anyways. That's my opinion.
I agree.
I think you're right. But I agree, it would have taken longer.
That's my opinion.
If it ever happened.
Okay. So okay, we have 2 minutes. So let's conclude here on page 278 with a beautiful portion from the Zohar. The Zohar is the mystic book that is really an explanation, a commentary on the Torah, mystical commentary on the Torah. Has a nice idea about this topic of
A
Torah.
king has a son whom he sends to a village to be educated until he shall have been initiated into the ways of the palace. When the king is informed that his son is now come to maturity, the king sends the matron, his mother, to bring him back to the palace, and there the king rejoices with him every day. The village people weep for the departure of the king's son from among them. But one wise man said to them, "Why do you weep? Was this not the king's son, whose true place is in his father's palace and not with you?"
Right? So
That sounds
they
like Jesus.
well, but the idea here is that the soul returns to God, our Creator. And I found that for some people, it's a nice way to comfort them after the loss of a relative or a loved one. The idea that, again, the Olam Haba are the good things that you did in this world and the legacy that you are leaving for those who are alive. And the idea that the body remains here, but the soul returns to God, our Creator. So we have to acknowledge the fact that this is a complicated topic because it is about a belief. It's not about a concrete issue that we can prove or we cannot prove. But within that belief, those who believe in the world to come, it is a big source of comfort. And I think that this idea that the body stays here and the soul returns to God is a very powerful one within our Jewish tradition. And I like this idea that for some people, the world to come is here in this world, and it is connected to our legacy and the good things that we can inherit for future generations.
Well, you started off by saying the influence of other religions. So clearly, I would think that Jesus and the resurrection and
Of course.
the emphasis on heaven and hell in
Of course.
Christianity influenced
Of course.
the rabbis.
And it's interesting because you can see that evolution or that different relationship to other religions through this topic of the afterlife. From the Bible to the Talmud, to the Middle Ages, to the Kabbalah, and then to the modern world.
I just keep on thinking about the very young me going to the funeral at a Catholic church and then going to have a mass said for this young girl down the street from us who committed suicide.
Ah.
And I said to one of the nuns as I was giving the check to have a mass said for her, I came to the funeral and I listened to everything that was said, and if you believe that her soul's gone to heaven, why is everybody so upset? And she said to me, well, we have feelings, dear.
It's a good
I was,
It's a good answer, for sure.
I was put in my place.
For sure.
You know.
Yeah, no, I think we all agree.
What do the Oriental
So-
religions have to say about
What's that?
What do the Oriental religions?
Well, they strongly believe in this idea of afterlife. And I don't know if you're familiar with this Jew-Bu. Do you know what Jew-Bu is? Judaism and Buddhism. Buddhism is not really a religion, it is a way of life, right? With meditation. And so
Some
Jews are
become
very,
Buddhist.
very deep into this idea of meditation and the world to come. So, yeah, we have a lot of influence from them. Yeah, we do. We do. Okay, we are not going to see each other at least here for class next week because it's going to be Rosh Hashanah. So I want to wish everyone a Shana Tova, happy and healthy New Year, and we will continue studying after the holidays. God
What
willing.
about this Tuesday after that, which is Erev Yom Kippur?
That's Erev